Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm joined today by Daniel Hamilton-Charlton from Property Searches Direct. Hi, Daniel. How are you doing?
David, I am great. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today.
Absolutely great to have you with us. Daniel, you and I have spoken before and we've spoken off camera, so I have a flavor of what it is that you do, and your unique take on how we can improve certain areas of our industry, particularly around the conveyancing process. But why don't you give us a little bit of background how why you started Property Searches Direct and what it aims to do?
Yeah, it's a good question, David. We looked at why I set up Property Searches Direct was to give the home moving audience choice. We looked at the pinch points of some of the delays, some of the catastrophic delays in the conveyancing process, and thought, is there a better way? We had I had the luxury to just take a step back from the coalface and see whether there was something else that we could be doing to make people's lives easier, to reduce stress, to hopefully improve their experience of moving home, so that perhaps they consider doing it more than once every 23 years. But searches were the bane of people's lives. Something that they weren't necessarily being introduced to until quite a long way into the process, something that was seen more as a tick boxing exercise rather than something that a consumer buying a property should actually have an interest in as soon as possible. And I suppose more than that, something that a vendor wouldn't consider. Why would I need to be bothered about that? Surely that's something the buyer takes care of. So we just thought, you know what, should we do something that puts searches in the consumer hands to give them choice, to enable them to engage with them earlier in the transaction, to help out, because people don't want to be bystanders. So that's kind of where Property Searches Direct came about. And we listened to the market. We looked at what we were doing. We've engaged with people moving home and asked them what their wants and needs are, what their appetite was to actually get involved in the process. And we were quite surprised at how engaged they were, how much appetite they had for knowledge, and how much they didn't know that the things that they weren't being presented with could actually impact on their timescales quite significantly. So we just said, okay, let's not go high tech at the outset. Let's just put some opportunities out there or some products out there that would enable people to get a grip of what they were doing. And now we're in the process of taking our messaging into the estate agency audience to say, actually, there's huge appetite. You kind of need to wake up and smell the coffee a little bit and say, actually, there is a slightly different way of doing things that can seriously impact upon your business model, your clients' enjoyment of actually moving home, and how quickly you can turn your pipelines over. So that's kind of where we came from.
It's interesting there because you use the word catastrophic delays sometimes, and that's often true that we need to, as agents, understand that when people are moving home, the delays that are caused to them can be the difference between them getting the next move of their dream or not. Financially, it can make all the difference and it can be catastrophic. The other thing is that when we look to sort of try and take the pain out of the moving process, if you were to ask somebody how their house sale went, they'll never tell you that, oh, it just took ages for us to find a buyer, or the agent's photos weren't very good, or anything that the agent did up until that point. They would always talk to you about the conveyancing process because that is the bit that they remember was most painful. And so the question is whether or not from a conveyancer's point of view, we've probably not gone out of our way to explain or demystify that conveyancing process and actually explain to people, well, what are searches? How long do they last for? Can they be transferred? There's a lot of mystique over that area of what conveyancers have been doing for a long time.
Yeah, totally. I would say the conveyancing market has definitely shown its own cracks over this last year. I think if you pressure test something, you can see what sort of gives. And I think the conveyancing market has definitely shown where the cracks are. But of course, the challenge has been everyone's been so busy. And as a business, trying to make a difference, I suppose it's been really frustrating. I suppose my really animated video with you all those months ago was right at the pinnacle of biggest frustration. Seeing the car crash happening and realizing that not enough people were doing anything about it. So yeah, those effing and jeffing moments were born out of for God's sake, seriously, because, you know, as a search supplier, we get screamed at. You know, we get screamed at by the people moving home because the estate agent said, oh, it's all the conveyancer's fault. And the conveyancer said it's all the search agent's fault. And we're going, hold on just a minute, right? You put the property on the market in January, you sold it in February, the searches were ordered in April, and we're now in May, getting close to June, and you're screaming at us.
Yeah.
There's a limit, you know, there's a limit to how much we can take. And that's probably why, well, it is one of the reasons why we said there has to be a better way, because we don't like being screamed at. And actually, when you explain the process to a client and say, had you been given the opportunity to know the impact that this would have on your transaction, had you been given the opportunity to make a difference, would you have done so? The answer is absolutely yes, I would.
Yeah.
Had you knowingly gone into this process, knowing that if you behaved in a slightly different way, the output would be dramatically different, would you have done something about it? Yes, I would. And then they say, well, why didn't the solicitor tell me about it? Why didn't my estate agent tell me about it? And I just had to say, well, they don't know, because, to be fair, everyone's so busy blaming somebody so that they end up with the good Trustpilot review, rather than saying, you're right, I should know more about this. I should have told you more about this at the outset. You know, I knew you'd be saying, you know, you'll be moving by June the 30th, but actually the reality is you couldn't possibly have done. And actually now in hindsight, there are things that we could have done. And we're just having to just roll everything back and say, let's now start to understand the things that we should have learned from, because I did a piece months ago now on the fact that every transaction has a deadline. You know, forget June, forget the SDLT deadlines. Every transaction has a deadline. Someone's moving for a reason. They're getting pregnant. So they're pregnant. They're getting married. They're divorcing. Someone's died. Their job relocation. Their new schools. Everyone's got a
full
deadline.
gamut, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And when someone comes to you as an agent and says, the first thing you'd ask someone is, why are you moving? Why are you moving? Surely that's on everyone's agenda. Why are you moving? They'll come out with a reason. And that reason has some sort of time mark stamped into it that they, whether you believe it or not, are working to it. That everyone has an expectation of timescale. So unless you start talking about the logistics of that timescale and either supporting it by putting steps into place to enable them to hit it, or managing their expectations appropriately based on data that you have available to you to say, I can tell you now that won't happen, and these are the reasons why. And then managing expectations to set a new deadline or set a new expectation of deadline, then, you know, if you don't do that at the outset, there's a car crash waiting to happen. So all we're trying to say to agents is, look, there's a better level of understanding and there's a better level of customer service delivery just by being aware of the impact that things that you have thus far had nothing to do with, but by understanding what they are and how they're impacted and what the nuances in your area are, then you can deliver a better service. And sometimes the best way to deliver a great service is simply by managing someone's expectations. You know, because if you manage someone's expectations, they will be delighted when their expectations are met. And if that's timescale, then you better watch out.
I've often wondered whether, because I have lots of conversations with conveyancers, and sometimes they know that a deadline is not going to be achievable, but they choose to only really impart that advice to the client very close to the deadline, because they feel that it's easier to sort of, or it's better to let them down perhaps after an amount of work has been done, rather than to manage those expectations up front. Are we saying, Daniel, that the cure is just starting the process earlier, or is it more nuanced than that?
I think that's a big question. Why doesn't the conveyancer talk about the pitfalls sooner? Simply because if you ask a conveyancer how long is this going to take, they're going to say, there are so many third parties that we're reliant on, I couldn't possibly tell you. If it was just down to us, we'd have it done in X amount of time, but they can't. They're never, ever, ever going to commit to a timescale. They just won't. And the ones that do are literally hanging themselves out to dry when it doesn't get met, because you told me it would happen by now. So no conveyancer is ever going to do that. So we've got to look at the component parts that are controllable. That's all we can do. We can all look at the bits that we can control. What can the conveyancer do to make themselves more effective? What can the client do to help out to make themselves more effective? What can the agent do to help out to make things more effective? And it's realizing that everyone's got a common goal. And the bit that's been missing over the last 12, 14 months is it feeling as though everyone's fighting against each other and there isn't actually a common goal. And of course there is. The conveyancer's not getting paid if people don't move. The estate agent's not getting paid if people don't move. And the client's not paying anyone if they don't move. Everyone wants to move. So actually everyone's direction is aligned. It's the fact that no one wants to take the blame for what might go wrong. And the estate agent will say, well, I did my bit because look, you've got a sole subject contract board out. We were fantastic. Anything that goes wrong from now on is the conveyancer's fault.
Yeah.
And the conveyancer's then saying, well, look, we'll do our best bit, but there's so many third parties. So anything that goes wrong is someone else's fault. And everyone's trying to hand off the blame. So it's going to be a really difficult conversation once the horse has already bolted to say something might go wrong here.
Yeah.
And who's going to be brave enough to say that? So I always said the agent holds all the keys. When you're an agent delivering a service and you're effectively in that position of consult, where someone comes to you and says, this is what I want to achieve. If you've done your work and you understand the process, you understand the pitfalls in your area, you understand the challenges that the client's going to have, and you've had that conversation and have set expectations or have a clear understanding of timescales, no one's going to feel disappointed if they still decide to move, because they've already set that expectation. I mean, let's just give you an example. I was looking at some of our figures today in terms of the expectations that a client might have on the 27th of August. So today's the 27th of August, David. Someone comes into your office or meets one of your guys and says, I want to move before Christmas. 27th of August, what do you reckon?
So it's doable, isn't it?
It should be, shouldn't it? Should be really doable.
Yeah.
So if we consider that on the 27th of August, you're in an area where the local authority search is taking 40 working days. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we order the search today, that search will come back on the 25th of October. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good, doesn't it? So let's bear in mind that today's the 27th of August. You take a property to the market. You promise those people they're going to move before Christmas. Oh yeah, get your Christmas stuff out of the loft, put it in boxes. You know, you're going to be moving it, celebrating your new house. And you take 2 weeks to sell it. Now, let's face it, we're coming into a market where things are going to slow down. You may not sell a property overnight. There's not a great deal of stock. There's not a great deal of appetite either. So we're going into a slightly cooler period. It may actually be normal as a market, but you take 2 weeks to sell the property. That client, your buyer, takes the end of that week or so to actually complete their paperwork, formally instruct that conveyancer. Now, the Conveyancing Association said that on average, a conveyancer won't order a local authority search until about 6.5 weeks into the transaction. Okay. So 6.5 weeks later, the searches are actually ordered. When do you think those searches come back?
So,
I'll tell you, 10th of January.
Right. So that's missing that Christmas deadline.
That's totally missing the deadline. And that's 27th of August in an area where your searches are taking 40 working days. And I can tell you now that they'll come back on the 10th of January. Now, they could indemnify. Okay. But if you think on day one, even if the buyer understood the challenges and the buyer bought those searches the day they agreed to buy that property, they could come back in October. If the vendor just took the stance and said, I'll just buy the local authority search, because let's face it, a drainage and water report takes 10 days, a ground report takes a couple of days, an environmental report can take 2 or 3 hours, chancellor indemnity policy will take a few hours. The local search is your problem. But if you order that and it takes 40 days and it comes back on the 25th of October, the buyer can go and buy the rest of their pack. The vendor spent their 130 quid on the local authority search that comes back on the 25th of October.
Yeah.
Are they moving before Christmas?
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
So given that that's the case, then these are some sort of frequently asked questions for you guys, I'm sure. But there's a myth out there that searches have to be carried out by the buyer's solicitor only, that they can't be relied upon if a third party has commissioned them, and that they can't be extended. They have a ticker on them, and once they're gone, they're gone.
Let's dispel the illusions. Right. So it isn't illusion that a search needs to be, certainly Barclays, I read the Barclays policy only this week. Barclays require a search to be no older than 3 months old at the point of exchange and 6 months old at the point of completion. So it's not a myth, that they are a ticking time bomb. So whereas in the height of the frenzy, we were empowering vendors to buy their entire search pack, things were selling quickly, they had to move by the 30th of June to satisfy their buy. It was the absolute right thing to do because things were moving quickly. When we're migrating into a slightly slower market, we're taking the consultative view with clients individually to say, okay, unless you're really confident that things are going to sell quickly, it's really not advisable that you buy your entire search pack. However, if you're in an area where it might take 75, 90 working days or more for the local authority search to come back, that's fine because it won't start the clock ticking until it's actually completed. So effectively, you've got 90 days of marketing for it to come complete. And then you've got another 3 months until that search actually expires. So you've got quite a long time. So there's still time to play with. But yeah, you've got, it is a conversation piece to have with people. Okay. But just bear in mind that even a buyer at the day that you agree to sale to them, they buy their searches. You are saving on average 6.5 weeks because that's the time point at which a conveyancer might get around to doing it. What was the other part of that question?
So yeah, effectively, we were talking about whether or not those searches are assignable.
Assignable, yes, indeed. Yeah. So the other part of this is who can buy them. Now, a search is a search that is reputable, is search code compliant, and it's COPSO regulated. Search code was set out to protect the buyer, the seller, the conveyancer, and the lender. And they are property specific. There is no client data on there whatsoever. You are buying an environmental report, drainage and water report, local authority search for that property. Okay. So it doesn't matter who buys it. It's a valid document that is set out to offer security and peace of mind to all collaborators and all stakeholders in the process. So anyone can buy it. And you must be in the position where you've transacted on a property, your purchase has fallen through, you know there are searches there, you resell it, and you say, can we have those searches? Has anyone ever said no?
It's seen as being a loss at that point. It's a lost cause for them because they're not using it. Yeah.
But as a buyer, so the buyer's fallen through, the property's still there, the searches still exist. No conveyancer will turn around and say, I won't have those. Why? Yeah. Because they are duty bound to deliver a service that's best for their client. If there are valid, compliant reports available in date that provide them with the data and security that they need to satisfy themselves, their client, and the lender, they're duty bound to accept them. Now, they may have a preference for a green one, or I might want a yellow one, or I'd order one from Joe Bloggs down the road. But as the document is concerned, can they say no to it if it ticks all their boxes? And the answer is absolutely not, particularly when their client's saying, you do as I'm asking you to do, and it's in my interest that you accept that for the sake of time. So
interestingly, that will mean then that if estate agents are worrying about, say, using your service because it may disrupt the arrangements that they have with solicitors that are already their preferred conveyancers, if you like, and they don't want to step on their toes, they don't need to worry about that, because in actual fact, you're not taking away the conveyancing work from anybody. You're in fact enabling them to get their job done more efficiently and more quickly.
Yeah, so let's look at that. And we've had a number of clients come to us saying, can you send a document to my conveyancer to put their mind at ease that I'm not buying some back alley piece of rubbish? And on our home movers page, you can now download a PDF document that provides appropriate links to the conveyancer. They can download draft copies of all our insurance policies, all the draft documentation to see exactly what they're getting, and evidence to say that each of the component parts are COPSO covered and search code compliant, all the rest of it. So it's as quick as that. We had a client only on Tuesday of this week that turned around and said, my client says I can't do that. And he said, I'm not the sort of person that will be told that I can't do something. So I want to just get on and do it anyway. Can I send him something? And I sent this guy at Bindman Solicitors a piece of paper. He emailed me straight back, copied his client in and said to his client, can you just let me know when you've ordered them?
Perfect.
And that's
solicitor for better than that.
That solicitor straight away said to his client, I think that's a bit dodgy. He received our paperwork and then he said, let me know when you've ordered them. I don't have an issue with them. Why doesn't he have an issue with them? Because there's nothing to have an issue with them about. There's nothing wrong with them. They are compliant. But if you look at the solicitors themselves now, and everyone says that solicitors find it difficult to change, and yeah, we all do. We all find it difficult to change. Every agent finds it difficult to change. You find what you do day to day, and you do it the next day, and it works, and you keep doing it. No one really thinks about what better looks like if what you do works. So when you look at the conveyancing process, it is a whole load of ticking boxes. And if you scream at a conveyancer and say, do it quicker, they will simply say, I've still got the same number of boxes to tick. How can I possibly do it quicker? So what we're saying is, well, why don't we just take a few of those boxes away? Why should you have to deal with certain things? Why should you have to engage with the client? Go through, well, you need to go through the IDML process, but let's just say you go through the IDML process, you engage with the client and obviously tell them how much their searches are going to be. You then take money for their searches, you put the searches in your account, you engage your accountants, and you open a ledger for the client. And then at the point at which you are, as a conveyancer, are happy to order the searches, you then get around to saying, well, okay, I've got a contract. I'm pretty sure you've got your finances. And I'm pretty, okay, now let's look at the ledger and see whether we've got enough money on the account, and then we place the order. Then we place an order, then we get an invoice. We've got to satisfy the invoice from that supplier, and then the accounts team are involved. It's just an absolute headache. Surely, to just say to a client, go and buy your searches. If you're confident that you're buying that property and you can afford it and you're happy the vendor's selling to you, you can order your searches quicker than we as your conveyancer can. We don't need to take your money. We don't need to open a ledger. We don't need to panic about our PII insurance and getting the order wrong. You order them and get them delivered to us.
It's interesting because the debate on whether or not estate agents should be encouraging their clients to become sale ready earlier in the process. So the best practice guide, I suppose, would be that if I go and visit you in your home, I value your property, and you say, yes, David, I'd like you to sell the house. I should then be having a chat with you and saying, listen, guys, the earlier you get on this, the better your chances are of cutting down the amount of time taken to convey your property. And it may actually stop a property from falling through, because timescales are important to everybody, and the sooner you get on with this, the better. Now, what prevents me as an agent from having that conversation with the client is that I know that most clients delay instructing a solicitor for as late as they can in the process, because they are worried about incurring costs.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And once they've pushed that button, they there is this archaic notion, because I think it's gone by that kind of solicitor has now gone, but there is this archaic notion of the old timer solicitor that hits the stopwatch as soon as they pick up the phone to you, and therefore every minute is billable and all that sort of stuff. I think within the conveyancing sphere, largely speaking, it's almost like a fixed price scenario. It doesn't really increase. For that reason, you don't get loads and loads of time with your solicitor. But as far as the public are concerned, they may be hesitant on instructing a solicitor. This, to me, feels like you are introducing not the fact that they need to instruct a solicitor or fill in any complicated forms or worry about where it is their deeds are stored or any of that stuff. This is really you're purchasing your searches. You're going to be ready for the minute that you do.
Well, it's a little bit broader than that, because when a client instructs their solicitor, they are sent their legal protocol forms, their terms of engagement. There's a whole load of paperwork that needs to come out. And we said right at the outset when we set up the business, we really should be enabling people to prepare themselves for a move. And what does that actually look like? When a sale gets agreed, you're right. People tend to look at conveyancers at the point of need. I now need a solicitor. I should now put a name on a memorandum of sale, and I better go away and make sure they're instructed. And they assume that process will be really quick. The minute they pick up the phone to conveyance and the conveyancer says, yes, I'll act for you, and they put that name on the memorandum of sale, surely they can just act for me. Well, the reality is they can't. They can't act for you straight away. They need to have ID AML reporting for you. They need to know who you are and that you're not dodgy. They need you to sign their terms of business that you need to read and sign and get back to them. And they need some information from you if you're transacting a sale. They need your property information form. They need your fixtures and contents form. And if it's leasehold, they need your leasehold information form. So without that, they can't put a contract together. They can't do anything for you. So we've been building what we call get legally prepared pages that enable estate agents to point their clients at an online resource that guides them through some steps that they really should consider getting to grip with. The first one is, of course, provide us with an ID AML report. And as estate agents, that's an administrative burden. You've got to identify these people. You've probably got to fund some sort of solution. And we've just said, look, let the client go to a page that's all branded yours and let them buy an ID AML reporting solution that they can do remotely. And the first thing you'll hear about them is a completed report in your secure dashboard, right? What does that tell you as an estate agent? If I was the estate agent, it tells me they're committed. Point one, how proactive are my clients? These guys have done their ID AML reports. They're a committed client. Point two is fill out your protocol forms, right? You don't need to instruct a conveyancer to do this. They're there. Start filling out your property information forms. Yeah. And as an agent, I'll be having a conversation with them, asking them to get on and do that. Why? There's information in there that's pertinent to me as your agent marketing it. I need to know about boundary disputes or enabling disputes or any challenges you've got with the property or building regs or the rest of it. And your property information form will guide you through some fairly simple to answer questions, but ask you to amass paperwork to support the completion of that form.
Yeah, that's really important.
It is really important. It's vital to it. And people that don't understand how vital the completion of those protocol forms are really missing the point. There's no point in saying you've instructed a solicitor and a memorandum of sale going out and everyone doing their sales progression if the client hasn't filled out their paperwork. There's no contract going out. Meanwhile, you've got a buyer who hasn't got to fill out any forms apart from agree terms of engagement and do their ID. The buyer sat there going, send my solicitor a contract. Why have you not sent my solicitor a contract? A week goes by. My solicitor still hasn't got a contract. As a buyer, I'm having doubts that you're serious about selling this property to me. Another week goes by. Now, this happens time and time again. It is a fall through waiting to happen, not through anyone's real fault, but because reasonable doubt has been sown into the buyer's mind that you're not serious about selling to them. and they're worried about not getting their dream home. So it's kind of the worst way to set up a sale or to go into a relationship or a conveyance with that "I don't really trust you" thing. So what we said to agencies, look, on these pages, we're going to make the legal protocol forms freely available for people to engage with and complete during marketing. And it should be up to you to say to them, "Got your ID, fantastic. Have you made a start on your protocol forms yet?" Or, "Yeah, I've got a bit of work to do." Right, yeah, but crack on. Because when I've sold your property and you engage with the solicitor, without those, there's nothing going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's
not to mention those protocol forms in themselves could be important to the agent during the marketing process, because it's not widely publicized, but it's a fact that agents have a duty to disclose anything that could materially affect somebody's decision to purchase the property or the value that they place on that property as well.
Yeah.
And we're not, as an industry, making those key facts available early enough on in the process. So typically, a lot of agents are still, you'd be amazed how many agents list a property without even noting whether it's a leasehold or a freehold property. And those are the very sort of basics you would expect for them to disclose. But you know, where the boundaries are, which pieces of land are included in this sale, whether there have been any right of way issues or anything like that. These are all sort of things that agents should really be offering upfront to a buyer so they can make the best decisions.
Totally. I mean, if I was back in agency now, I would not take a client seriously until I'd had their ID forms and I'd had copies of their protocol forms. I'd want those in my file.
Yeah.
And I'd want to know, I'd want to read those and understand them and understand, you know, what I'm trying to sell. The BASPI form is coming, you know, the upfront buyers and sellers property information form. We've digitized one of those for when it's globally accepted. From that, if anyone does fill out a BASPI form, we can data scrape and fill out a protocol form. But you know, that is a form that should be interrogated by the agents. So I suppose one thing people ask us is, well, why don't I just instruct my conveyancer sooner? It's probably a thought you've had. Why wouldn't you just instruct a conveyancer sooner? The reality is conveyancers are busy people and they have to have their priorities in the right place. Particularly while things are really busy, they're under real pressure to push live files through. So are they going to focus a great deal of effort and resource in a property that hasn't sold yet?
Probably not.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they going to have resources to hold your hands to help you fill out your protocol forms and make sure you do them? No. They're going to be focusing on live files, stuff that they've got contracts on that they're having to push forward to exchange of contracts. So if they're not in a position where they've got a resource to hold people's hands, make sure they're filling out protocol forms, making sure they're getting those fence certificates together, their building insurance stuff, all that stuff amassed, if they're not doing it, surely it's common sense that someone else does. And that someone else is actually the estate agent who's selling the property, who has an invested interest in that paperwork being collated. Why? Because they need it for the conveyancer, but they also need it for their marketing. So just instructing a conveyancer when you go to the market is not going to set the world alight, because that's not the delay. I could instruct a solicitor today. Why? Because they could send me the terms of engagement, I could sign them and send them back, and I can give them all my protocol forms and say, there you go. And I can fill out CREDAS via an app today and have it land on their dashboard this afternoon, because that takes a matter of 3 or 4 minutes. But I couldn't do that if I hadn't even started filling out my paperwork yet.
So I guess where are we going with this? What is because the industry is adapting slowly, but it's adapting to these sort of the recent challenge that we've had is in terms of volume coming through. Now, we all wish we're going to continue having this volume, but let's face it, it's unlikely to be sustainable and not necessarily the healthiest of markets, really, if you've got increasing prices and certain people are getting locked out of markets. But going forward, the volume issues not necessarily going to be there, but we will have time to fix this and time to reform things. We also hear a lot in the press about the reforms that may be coming through in terms of various different innovations to make upfront information available to buyers. And we've heard what sounds a lot like home information packs. They're not, but we've heard of the resurgence of perhaps talk of a logbook. So take us through that, Daniel.
Yeah, I think there's this whole thing of, oh, well, hips are coming back, and I think lots of people that are saying that may not even been in the industry when hips were there. Hips were not, the hips that came out were not what they should have been. They became rapidly something that couldn't be trusted because so many of the elements were taken out of them. There wasn't enough regulation behind the searches that were put in them, that actually people didn't trust the regulated searches that were there, and so ended up having to go and duplicate and buy their own searches anyway because they simply couldn't rely on them. So it wasn't really done properly, although it was set out as a revolution. If that revolution had been backed up by absolute quality and value, then it might have got somewhere. But the reality is it didn't. Logbooks are something we're focusing on big time. Logbooks are not only a great marketing opportunity, and I'll touch on that in a moment, but logbooks are a vital digital engaging environment for home owners or investors or anyone interested in property to collate all of their paperwork in a digital environment so that it's there for when they're thinking of selling. We're in our forever house now. We're not moving, but I have a logbook for our property, not because I'm thinking of selling, but God forbid, I'm going to drop dead at some point. My family are going to want to know what to do with the property. And I know that they can have access to our logbook, and in there will be all of the paperwork that they need. They don't need to ask me questions. They can't ask me questions. I'm dead, but all the stuff's in there.
So typically, what is in your logbook now, Daniel?
Well, my logbook at the moment reminds me of silly things like the MOT is due on the car. It reminds me when my buildings insurance is up for renewal. It reminds me when I ought to think about shopping around for the next fixed rate on my mortgage. When I log into it, it tells me what the market trends have done and what the current values might be. It reminds me whether my EPC is live or not. It reminds me of my council tax banding. It reminds me of my dimensions and it's got my fencer certificates in it. It's got my building control certificates in it. It's got everything related to do with my property. And at the point at which I were to think about selling my property, I would fill out my protocol form, and my protocol forms would be in there as well. My fixtures and contents would be in there. My leasehold information forms would be in there if I were leasehold. It is the hub of all things property related that people need to keep together. But invariably, they've either got it screwed up in a drawer somewhere, or they've got it filed in a Google Drive somewhere, or they've got it in, I put it in an email, but it's some, have I got it in my sent items? Is it in my drive? I've got it somewhere. And we're just saying, look, it needs to be here. This needs to be your useful environment. So what we've built is, what we're collaborating on is a digital environment, which is, I have to say, we had a bit of a beauty parade, and the environment that we're collaborating with is an absolutely stunning beast. I won't go as far as to say it's like Apple, but it's not going to come with an instruction booklet. We've given it to a few agents and said, just try with that. And all of them come back and gone, we get it. It's fantastic. What can we do with it? So that was very encouraging. The great thing is there's 28 million properties in the UK, and all of them have been digitized. You as an estate agent can brand your logbook on all of your postcode areas, and then you can invite your market to go and claim their logbook. Now, whether they're thinking of selling or not is a complete irrelevance at this stage.
That's a great idea.
But when they claim their logbook, you might just say to them, interested in property values, interested in just keeping up with market trends, interested. Everyone's interested in property. Everyone's interested in property value, even if they're not thinking of selling.
Yeah.
But when they log into their logbook and claim it as an owner, it tells them when it was last transacted, And based on when it was last transacted, it tells them what the value is likely to be. Now, I've extended mine. I put balconies on it. I've put new heating systems in. There's a lot we've done here. So I know that the figure that my logbook tells me may not be a fair reflection of market value based on what I would sell it for, but it's given me an idea of what the market trends have done since I bought it, right? What it has in there then is the agent's brand, front and center. So if someone logs into the logbook, have I got an EPC? All the stuff's in there already. Your EPC's in there, your price is there. The agent's details are there, and you can change the status to settled. It's your forever home. You could change the status to thinking of selling, or actively selling, or doing it up. And that status then is shared with the estate agent. So they can look on their dashboard. They can look at all the claimed digital environments. They can see all the statuses that have been set. And of course, the client that's looking in the logbook who is thinking of selling, if they change their status of thinking of selling, first thing it says is, right, here's the agent. Do you want to come out and ask them to come out and value your property? And while you're about it, here are some things that you really should be thinking about getting to grips with. You should be thinking about delivering an IDAML report to this agent to tell them you're serious about selling because you want to engage with them. Here are your protocol forms that you should fill out to get you ahead of the game. You need to have a conversation with us about searches, whether this is for you as a buyer buying a property or whether you should think about getting ahead of the game when selling your property. It's a conversation piece, and start amassing all the paperwork and storing it in that environment. But the beauty for an agent is, I don't know what your postcode area is in your area, but you could leaflet all 7,000 of them and see how many of them get claimed and the status of each one of them. The beauty is anyone that's got these environments, they can go on holiday down in Plymouth. Oh God, if that property ever came on the market, they can favorite it. That address is favorited in their logbook. And if that client claims it and changes the status to thinking of selling, the related agent's brand is flashed up. They're thinking of selling, and this is the agent that's likely to get hold of it. You want to register your details with them.
I love it. I love it. Show me where to sign. This is great. This is great.
So lots
where have you been all my life?
Yeah, here. But the beauty of it is it's a great, it's not a me. We're trying to be, it's a very selfless.
It's a passive sort of.
Yeah, it's a selfless
branding
thing. We're delivering component parts, but we want to drive change. We want to drive progressive behaviors and supportive behaviors for clients to know the things that they should be expecting to think about doing when selling their property. But also we can educate the agent to say, this is why the logbook looks like this. This is why it's taking the client on this path.
So that logbook, presuming then that logbook is not necessarily personal to the agent, the client can still go on if they needed to or wanted to use another estate agent. Yeah, they could still use that logbook.
They can invite companies into that environment, so they'll be able to say, I want to invite this agent in. So yeah, it may well be that you've fallen out with someone, they go, I'm never going to use you in a month of Sundays. Yeah. Well, they can invite another agent into that environment, and that agent can have the opportunity to participate in that. But we're giving all agents the opportunity to have all of their postcode areas branded. So, you know, it's not unique to an agent, but when that client claims it, it's very much their logbook. But yeah, they can invite or exclude anyone they want. They can invite conveyancers into that environment as well, removal companies into that environment, wherever. But importantly, it's the vault, it's the hub of all things property. You know, I've just had some windows done. I've got a fence certificate. What is the first thing I did? Scanned it and shoved it in my logbook.
I love the concept of it, and I also love that it's more than just a sort of an online digital Google Drive you can shove things into, but it's also an active, it's a live document, isn't it? It's a live environment that they can get updates on their property, and if they are thinking of selling, then very quickly the agent is in that loop. And for a proactive agent to get hold of this concept of logbooks and start to market that to their town and their environment, I think it's superb. Not only is it in the best interest of the agent, it's in the best interest of buyers and sellers across the country to get ready sooner. So this really would be leading the way. So I guess, Daniel, you're looking for pioneers, people to make this their own.
Yeah, we do have some pioneer agents that are beta testing with us. I mean, there's all sorts of exciting stuff. Like this agent came to us and said, well, I've got 70 properties currently live on the market with marketing. We don't want people to go into and claim their logbook and have nothing in it. So we've gone, okay. So we developed a process whereby we data scrape all their property details, photographs, all the rest of it, dimensions straight into the logbook. So when they come in, they go, ah, this is my place.
My house, yeah.
It's all here. It's all, yeah, all the marketing materials here, it's all there. So any agent that said, well, I've got 300 properties on the market, and the first thing I want to do is invite all of my clients into that environment. Happy days. We'll data scrape it. If it's on Rightmove, your own website, it's all data scrape put in there, your brand's in there, ready to go. And then we'll provide you with a unique QR code, effectively, for you to put on leafleting to send around the area in any particular properties that you want to win, or all of them, and say, come and claim your logbook and get involved. The nice thing about it, although your brand's in there, it's been specifically built to be an engaging, valuable place for people to play with anyway. They'll want to do things in it. I think when you see one, David, you'll get it. You'll go, you know, if you're anything like me, if you've got a new toy, you want to play with it. And you want to go, oh, I can do this to it now. I want to do that to it. Oh, I can add that. And I can, suddenly you'll find yourself pulling things into that environment and playing with it. And suddenly you go, okay, this is now valuable to me. It means something. And now I'm not thinking of selling. However, at the point at which I were to be thinking of selling, it's going to tell me all the things that will be useful for me to know. And if there's an agent that's in my area, they're going to be there too. And I go, great, I've got an idea of what the market value is based on what I last paid for it, but I spent about 120 grand on it. So, you know, there or thereabouts. You have a conversation with an agent from a point of relative knowledge and understanding.
I can see this being very interesting to investors as well, because they typically do like to tinker with property details, their mortgage documents, insurance is always hard.
Tenancy renewals,
this is fantastic.
Yeah, so landlords particularly, I've got a couple that we've just invited in and said, give it a go, that they put their entire portfolio in. And any landlords can just provide us with like a CSV document. We can just import it and put their entire portfolio in there.
So it's almost like, I mean, perhaps it didn't start out this way, but it becomes a prospecting opportunity really for an agent as well.
That was the idea really behind it. We see your success as an agent as our success. You know, if no one sells houses, no one's buying searches, right? But if we can provide marketing tools to progressive agents that want to drive change and want to take market share, then why on earth wouldn't we support that activity? Why wouldn't we put processes in place to make your lives easier to do that? So that's sort of where we've come from, really. It's
very, very exciting, Daniel. There'll be a moment on this recording where you see me go, ha ha. This is what it's all about.
Has it not happened yet?
No. It is. It happened a few minutes ago. The minute you start talking about the logbooks and how they would work, a big smile hit my face, because I think if you are a progressive agent and you do want to drive new behaviors, we all do, but we're lazy. We are lazy because it's not. It may be broken, but it works enough for us to get sales through. And we need to be stronger with that, but we need the tools to be able to do it. So we need to encourage those behaviors and give people an incentive to do it. With the logbook, with the environment that you're creating, you're giving something tangible that people can actually log into. They own it. They own it. As they own their house, they own all of those details. And to me, it's genius, and I love it. I really do, and I get it, what it would do as an agent and how it can be used. But tell me, and perhaps for everybody watching today, in terms of your service in general, so the logbook side of things is not perhaps ready to roll out en masse, but it's coming soon.
It's a few weeks away. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So really excited about that. But talk to us about what your services cost an agent, how they get involved with you, and typically
Well,
speaking, how quickly they can get on board with you.
right now, the cost to an agent to work with us is zero. And we've had conversations internally to say, does that weaken the proposition? Do people see it as meaningless? But I'm not paying for it, so it can't have value. And we've toyed with that, but we can't get over the fact that we're trying not to put barriers in front of people, and we want to be as transparent as we can. And all we're trying to deliver are solutions that help people move faster or empower people to make decisions for themselves. It's not a dictate. It's not a you must do this. It's a conversation that people will want to have about, this is the time frame I want to work to. Is it reasonable? Can I do it? What steps do I need to put in place to make that happen? And that may be a vendor, it may be a buyer, but everyone's got to go into this with their eyes wide open. So we've been building what I'd call our low tech solutions. Our low tech solutions are our Get Legally Prepared pages. Our Get Legally Prepared pages have morphed over this last week with changing market conditions, but the content remains very similar. One, it's a celebration of the fact that clients go into an environment where they're celebrating the fact that they are instructing you. Fantastic. It's providing them with the ability to order their IDAML and have those reports come back to you without having to do anything about it or fund it or anything. It's providing them with access to their protocol forms to complete and send you copies. It's encouraging them to instruct a conveyancer. It's also giving them the ability to order their searches on their onward purchase and giving them the choice to order their searches. Now, we build and host those white label pages for agents that we're working with for nothing. Why would you do that, Dan? Because we make money on searches.
Yep.
All right. Will we build these pages for anybody? No. Why not, Dan? I'm not interested in empowering an agent that's not actually going to drive change. If you're serious about giving your clients opportunity and choice and having broader conversations with them about their move and the feasibility of timescales, we're with you all the way. If you're only ever going to do what you've always done, gosh, I said that wrong, didn't I? But you get my point, then you're never going to change. And we're not hosting something that no one's getting any value out of. But to work with us and for us to support you and even provide some training with your team, some understanding about process to help explain about the search timescales in your area and what actually happens, absolutely for free, because that's what we want to do. My tombstone will say, hopefully, apart from he was an all right dad and he liked dogs and all the rest of it, but he made a difference to property transactions.
I very much hope so, because we spoke off camera, if you like, about your passion, because we've had other interviews before and they've had a very different tone to them, and but you are passionate about positive change within the industry. There's a lot of people that say that they are, but they lack the ability to deliver it. But really, you're doing your best to drive behavioral change and to, because let's face it, these things didn't happen overnight. These processes and this stubbornness, it's ingrained in us for 50, 60 years of doing things the same way. Our marketing methods, those are all modern. The way that we engage with our buyers and sellers, that's been modernized, but the conveyancing process and how we handle and progress sales, largely unchanged for a vast amount of time.
You're right. I've been saying that actually people's attitudes and behaviors are inherited. You'd have a junior neg come into a business and before you know it, they've overheard a conversation and they've adopted that thing that someone might say. And it might be about a conveyancer, it might be about anything, but lots of the behaviors in the industry are adopted, they are inherited. And actually, I'm trying to say that there is actually a different way of doing things and there is a different behavior to adopt, and there is a little bit of a game changer coming, and I think quite a significant game changer. And I think that agents that want to take on a market share. Now, we'll all admit, and I'm the first one to say, for God's sake, let's not talk the market down. Self-fulfilling prophecies are a nightmare. You know, you only need the Daily Mail to get behind it. Before you know it, everyone's talking about a property collapse. And I think that's unfair. I think that, yes, there is going to be a slowing, but bearing in mind we've been driving at 180 miles an hour down the motorway, we're now asked to do 70 miles an hour. It's going to feel slow, but it's going to be.
We're typically, we as the British public now, and also our press, we're very fatalistic. Something is either the best it's ever been or the worst it's ever been, and there is no room in the middle.
No.
But the market, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people that I speak to, although it's been a great time for estate agents, been a superb time for homeowners, it has been the most challenging of times for people buying property. Buyers do not feel that they're in a great space at the moment. First-time buyers are always at the squeezed end of the market, and they are particularly sore because prices are rising, opportunities are dropping, and they feel that if they don't spend that mortgage offer that's burning a hole in their pocket this week, they'll miss their chance. Investors are a whole group of people that haven't had a look in for maybe near enough to 2 years right now, because they're competing with members of the general public. So to me, our markets need to catch their breath. We need to slow down, but we need to take this time to work together with our colleagues from the conveyancing sector and say, look, let's not just go at this again. Let's be prepared for the next time it does happen, and let's maybe try and make all our lives a little bit easier. And I'm hoping that with suppliers like yourselves that understand that marketplace intimately, but also get the mindset of both agents and also the conveyancers involved, that we can all together deliver value to the customers.
Absolutely. We speak to agents, we speak to conveyancers, and it's interesting because even the conveyancers are realizing that there are some leaner times ahead, and they're looking at sort of whether they can do some hand holding, whether there is something more that they can do. And I've said, look, with the greatest of respect, please don't. Because when the market picks up again, that's the first thing that you will drop. And if the property sector is reliant on you still doing the hand holding, the wheels just come off again. So really, I'm sort of begging the property sector to say, actually, do you know what? There is more that we can do with our clients during marketing time that can make a difference. And there are things that we should try and understand better so that we can convey messages to our clients that can help them understand why something might not go the way they expect it to, and not rely on the conveyancer to always pick up the pieces, because it's unfair to expect them to do so. But if we do, in a lean time, in a quiet time, have the conveyancers do that, then you'll still expect it at the point at which everything tears off again and everything's really busy and volume picks up, and nothing will improve. So I'm saying, look, if things are going to go quieter, if we are going to have a little bit of time on our hands, let's just take that breath. Let's just take a step back. Let's do some listening. Let's engage with businesses like ourselves that are saying, look, I'm not trying to sell to you. I have no interest in selling to you as an estate agent. The property logbook, yes, there will be some commercial terms on that, but believe me, the marketing value will far outweigh anything that we'll be asking for. Why? Because we might make some money on searches. But we are saying, look, just take a step back, appreciate that the market is going to be changing, and that there's more that can be done by you to make it a better place, to make it less stressful, to eliminate some of those fall throughs based on expectations not being met, and deliver better customer service. And it not be a tech solution. It doesn't have to be a high-tech solution. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just needs to be knowledge.
Some of the best solutions can be the simplest ones, as long as it adds value. And the best solutions, when you look at prop tech, you look at the sort of ideas and innovations going on in this space, the best solutions benefit not only the agent or not only the homeowner, but everybody involved in the process. And I think that your view on things and your solution does indeed deliver value to everybody. So it's buyer, it's seller, it's even somebody that hasn't yet got around to thinking about selling their house, but you're getting them prepared for the process. So I think this is going to deliver an immense amount of value. And again, Daniel is looking for and interested in engaging with agents that are progressive, that have got a willingness to help pitch in and change attitudes in our industry. And God knows there's a few of those out there, aren't there?
I hope there are. And it's just having that self-belief and not being swayed by the lowest common denominator. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. But some agents will listen to all the great things, all the great advice, and understand it all and go, this is the right thing to do. I get it. This is completely impartial. The clients can do this stuff. And they speak to the old boy conveyancer down the road that's always done it a different way, who says that's not a good idea. And before you know it, guess what? They go, oh, that's not a good idea. And it's having the confidence to say, actually, if that conveyance is not the right one for me and my clients, we need to go somewhere else. But let me give you a takeaway, David.
Yeah.
Bury Metropolitan, right? Your area.
Yeah.
How long are your searches taking in your area? You should know this because I've given you the link to the data, which we.
Well, I wanted to be fresh and unprepared, Daniel.
I'll tell you then. Well, look. 25 working days for a regulated search in your area, right? Which is the button that most conveyancers in your area will push, because that's what the search agents told them they should push every time. So 25 working days. Your local council will produce a council sourced search within 7.
Right.
Okay. So that knowledge of saying to a client, you're buying a property, what's your timescale? Your options are 25 working days for £130 local authority search, or 7 days. And I think the local council was charging £185. It's £55 difference, but 25 working days or 7 working days.
Is that what they call a personal search? Is that what
a personal search is a regulated search. So that takes a search agent to go into the council and look at the data themselves.
Right. Okay.
A council source search is reliant on council resources. So council staff doing it for you. Okay.
Does every council offer that, or is it only certain?
Every council will offer a council sourced search. The challenge we've got, or we've had over the past few months, is resourcing. In some council areas, we've had to put some big red flags up to say the resources in that building at the moment do not know what they're doing. They don't work in that property department. They are sourcing data they don't really understand, and it can't really be relied on. So although that may be a quicker solution, you're best off getting a search agent in there that knows what they're doing to do it for you, although it may take 5 or 6 days longer due to lack of access. But we kind of know those nuances. But yeah, all councils will provide a council source search. Some are quicker, some are slower. But in your area, if you took a property on today that's really saleable,
yep,
and you sold that sale agreed, it took a couple of weeks, 13th of September, get that sale agreed, board goes up. End of that week, the buyer instructs their solicitor. Searches are ordered in 6.5 weeks' time because they've left it to the conveyancer. Searches come back on the 3rd of November.
Yeah.
Right. So that's assuming everything goes right. That's assuming the chain's together. That's assuming that the contracts do come out. There's no overriding agreements. There's no leasehold issues or whatever. But you just got to start thinking about these things and go, well, look, if something did go wrong, what could I have done? Did that 6.5 week delay to start ordering the searches, did that need to happen? No. And when I order the searches, am I prepared to wait 25 days or do I want it through in 7? And those are the conversations we're having with clients every single day. These are your options. What would you like to do? And that's all we're about. We're saying to agents, it is a conversation piece. And, in areas where we talked about 30 plus working day council areas where we're saying, actually, if you left the process to the status quo, if you left it to the buyer's conveyancer, is a client coming to the market on the, 27th of August going to move before Christmas? All right, left to the status quo, the answer is no in Worcester City Council, Wiltshire Council, West Oxfordshire, Waverley Borough, Tunbridge and Malling, Tewkesbury, Tamworth, Sunderland, Stafford, South Staffordshire, South Cambridgeshire, Salford City, Royal Borough, Greenwich, Rosendale Borough, Rochdale Metropolitan, Plymouth City, Northumberland City, North West Leicestershire, North Warwickshire, Newcastle upon Tyne, Mansfield District, London boroughs of Redbridge, Havering, Hackney, Camden, Barnet, Lichfield District, Lewes District, High Peak Borough, Gateshead Metropolitan, Forest of Dean, Flintshire County, Durham County, Dorset Councils, Weymouth, Portland Borough, West Dorset, Purbeck and North Dorset, Cotswold District, Central Bedfordshire, Cannock Chase, Cambridge City, Barnley Borough, Bridgend County, and Boston Borough Council.
Wow, that sounded like the train line from hell.
It is. That any agent in that area sticking to the status quo on the 27th of August, telling their clients, no problem at all, we're going to sell this overnight, you'll be in before Christmas. They can't say that unless the client takes control or the buyer takes control of those searches, because if they don't, they're not going to see those searches back till January.
And if you're an agent watching this, you need to sit up and pay attention, because whether you like it or not, our markets are seasonal. So what happens is very often that you will take somebody on in the early spring and they want to get their move through by the summer. They want to be able to buy a house, move a house, maybe squeeze in a week of summer holiday and get the kids into that new school for the beginning of September. The people coming to the market at the beginning of September, their next deadline is, I want to be in the house for Christmas. And their vision is that they're going to be putting their Christmas tree up in the new home, and it's enough time. And we've always spoken about it being enough time to get people moved. So we start the marketing process at the end of August or the beginning of September. If we find you a buyer within 2 or 3 weeks, and let's face it, in this sort of marketplace, if the property is priced right and we've got the promotion right, we're going to be agreeing a sale for you. But you shouldn't take it for granted, because if we start this earlier, we get there sooner.
But what will happen is the agent will pat themselves on the back. I did a fantastic job. When the wheels came off, it wasn't my problem. Well, that shouldn't be an excuse anymore. You know, you should be saying, let's make it my job to highlight any concerns that could possibly derail this transaction, and not leave it to the conveyancer to be perceived to be messing it up for you, because that's just not fair. You know, you're literally telling people that it'll be okay, I'll sell it tomorrow and it'll be okay. And anything that goes wrong is the conveyancer's fault, when you know, or you should know, that actually it's out of their control.
Yeah.
And they can't order a search any sooner because they'll be waiting for a contract or funds or anything else. So, you know, you really do need to be aware of this stuff to manage expectations for your brand and the conveyancer's brand, because let's face it, the sooner this market realizes that it is a collaboration and that the common goal needs to be achieved for everyone to feel good about this. This hot potato and this blame culture has got to go. You can't just say, I've done my job, the next bit's someone else's problem, when actually we're delivering knowledge and we're delivering insight to say, please get a grip with this, because left to its own devices, timescales won't be met. If processes are put in place and options are given to clients or buyers to do things sooner, timescales can be met.
Superb. Be a part of the problem or be a part of the solution. Absolutely. If you want to be part of the solution, get in touch with Daniel. His details can be found on Kerfuffle. He is a man that understands the process and truly wants to help all of us achieve more. Daniel, can I ask you another question? Because it occurred to me whilst we were chatting. You said we happen to make some money off the searches. Would I then assume that solicitors have been making money off searches? And is that why they've been precious about them?
It depends on their regulatory body. A lot of solicitors cannot make money on searches. Right. The way you'd know whether they can or not is whether it's in their disbursement list. So you get a quote from them. If the searches are in the disbursements, then they're not making any money on it. It's simply being passed on in full to their search supplier. If they've got a disclosure or it's in their legal costs, then they're making money. They would have to disclose the fact they're making money on searches. The conveyancing, the CLC license, the Conveyancing Association, licensed conveyancers, SLC, they can make money on searches. So, but all of them have to deliver what's right for their client. And that's what I keep coming back to. It's about what's right for the client, what's the right thing for them. So if a conveyancer ever, and I would love one to do it, ever turn around to me and said, we will not accept those searches bought by that client because we have to order them ourselves. And I found out that the reason for that is that they wanted to make money on them, I would draw them through the press and make their lives a living hell, because no one should be forced into a position where they're being told that they have to buy searches from some particular source, just because they might be making a bit of money on it. Because, you know, all we're saying is, and this is a market change, we're the only search supplier doing it in this way. We're saying, here's the choice. The choice is wait for your conveyancer to do it, right? Nothing wrong with that. The product will be the same, apart from the fact that you'll be waiting longer for it. The Conveyancing Association said on average it's 6.5 weeks. You want to wait 6.5 weeks, fill your boots. If you're in a hurry, you want to get things done, or more importantly, as a seller, I want to see commitment from my buyer, ask them to buy their searches.
Yeah.
What better commitment can you get than them buying the searches for your property? There isn't one. That's the bit that you can control. You can't control them instructing their solicitor. You can't control them putting their solicitor in funds. You can't control them instructing the paperwork they've got to do. You can control when they buy those searches. And we're giving that option to agents and saying, flip your screen round, give them a promotional code that identifies them as you client, and get them to buy their searches.
Fantastic. Daniel Hamilton-Charlton, thank you very much. Today has been a real eye-opener.
Well, thank you, David. Yeah, likewise. I've, as ever, thoroughly enjoyed spending time with you. But yes, if anything has given you that moment, then let's have a chat off camera.
We will do that. We will do that.